Good evening. Welcome to the Black Conservative Voice with David Colbert here on the CTM News Network, the voice of truth. Well, I have some interesting news today. USPS sends voters into numerous states They send ballots into numerous states. False and misleading information is found on the mail-in voting. The U.S. Postal Service sent voters into numerous states false and misleading ballots information as voting by mail gets underway. A federal judge on Saturday ordered the USPS to immediately stop sending patently false mailers to Colorado residents. The mailers told voters that they must request a ballot 15 days ahead of the election, mail it back at least 7 days before the election day, and may not be able to vote if they lose it. However, Colorado automatically sends a ballot to all registered voters, and there are other options beyond returning the ballots by mail. The mailers prompted a lawsuit from Colorado Secretary of State Jenna Griswold, who said the USPS refused to delay or avoid sending them. U.S. District Court Judge William Martinez on Saturday granted Griswold's request for a temporary restraining order. In reality, Colorado voters do not need to request a ballot at any time. Voters who receive a ballot do not need to mail the ballot back at least 7 days before the election. They may alternately deposit the ballot at the drop box or may choose to vote in person up to and including election day, Martinez said. The notice is distributed was so confusing amongst voters by delivering a contradictory message. The USPS disputed the state of Colorado's argument in a court filing. The agencies asked Martinez to reverse the ruling, but most of the mailers have been delivered, Reuters reported. Even if the court views the postcard as having the potential to confuse voters, the postcards do not make false representations about Colorado law, the filing said. They do not even describe state law. Rather, they alert voters that state rules vary, refer to them to local election officials, and provide links that make it easier for voters to locate their state's rules. The intention of the mailer was to send a single set of recommendations that provided general guidance allowing voters who chose mail-in voting to do successfully, regardless of where they live and where they vote, the USPS spokeswoman Martha Johnson told Reuters. You know, people, I want y'all to know something about the USPS. The first thing we need to know about the USPS is they are endorsing former Vice President Joe Biden. They're Democratic supporters. So they got them in their pocket. They knew that DeJoy was recently hired, and he was trying to get things cleaned up and get things straightened out. So they call him into these Mickey Mouse hearings, trying to accuse him of doing illegal things years ago. And as you see, as I'm going to point out to you a little later on this program, there are some people that have done some illegal things, who have done some very lousy jobs in the past, and we'll be talking about that in a minute. But first of all, the historic signing of the Abraham Accord took place on Tuesday, September 15, 2020. President Trump spoke of his part in the brokered peace agreement for several Middle East countries Tuesday while welcoming the foreign ministers of Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, as well as Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. During an Oval Office sit-down, the president gifted Netanyahu the key to the White House. He then told the Prime Minister, this is peace in the Middle East without blood all over the sand. Before the signing ceremony, President Trump honored the leaders for making this peace deal. And he said, after decades of division and conflict, we mark the dawn of a new Middle East, he stated. Thanks to the great courage of the leaders of these three countries, we take a major stride toward a future in which people of all faiths and backgrounds live together in peace and prosperity. The world leaders then signed the historic Abraham Accords, normalizing relations for the first time between Israel and two Arab states in a quarter century, 25 years. White House senior advisor Jared Kushner said, we are already starting to see the beginning of the end of Israel-Arab conflict. During an interview Tuesday, he said normalization of relations between Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain shows the president is bringing people together. Kushner also noted President Trump's push for peace in the Middle East has been very well received in the region. He went on to suggest resolution to territorial disputes between Israel and Palestine will eventually be reached. With regard to the Palestinians, I think within time that will come. But what you are doing now is you're bringing people together, stated the White House senior advisor Kushner. Also said President Trump doesn't chase deals, but rather makes deals when they are ready. And that's correct. That is the way our president works. And I really appreciate this because I don't know if any of you have ever read the book, but he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. He knows how to make a deal. And he has proven that in this situation, in these peace agreements. Well, you're watching the Black Conservative Voice here on the CTM News Network, the Voice of Truth. We're going to take a break and be right back with you in a moment.
Dr. Melinda Morris supports a strong economy, safe neighborhoods, limited property taxes, and promotes an improved education system. Dr. Melinda Morris wants to improve access and insurance coverage for medical care. Dr. Morris is pro-life and will support right-to-life legislation in Austin. Dr. Morris will remain true to her values when she is elected to office. She is going to Austin to promote life, prosperity, and personal freedom for the constituents of Senate District 13.
Welcome back. You're watching the Black Conservative Voice with David Colbert here on the CTM News Network, the Voice of Truth. House GOP campaign platform promises a rebuild from current circumstances. Plan would increase funding for police among policy choices. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, a Republican from California, along with House Republicans, speaks on House steps to announce the Commitment to America agenda on Tuesday, September 15th. Less than 2 months before the November election, House Republicans on Tuesday received their agenda, which aims to combat COVID-19 pandemic, rebuild the economy, and increase funding for the police. The House GOP Commitment to America outlines their legislative priorities if they win the majority this fall. The announcement comes after the Republican National Committee chose not to craft an updated platform for 2020 and used the same one adopted at 2016 Republican National Convention. Instead, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said at a rollout event at the Capitol that his conference commitment applies to all Americans, regardless of their party affiliation, gender, or race. We will restore your way of life, the California Republican said. We will rebuild the greatest economy and we will renew the American dream. Join us and let's reunite this nation. Since Donald Trump, was elected in 2016, Republicans have controlled the executive branch and legislative branch, with the exception of the House Democrats winning the majority in the chamber in 2018. McCarthy, first elected in 2006, was a majority leader from 2013 to 2019 and has been a minority leader since then. The plan seeks to quell the coronavirus pandemic that has killed more than 194 Americans this year, and I must state that those 194 also had about 90% of them were not fully COVID-19 deaths. And they want to keep putting that in there like that's the whole number. It's not. A lot of people died of other things, and maybe they got COVID or somewhere along the line. But to me, there's no proof of that, because in the very beginning, there was doctors that were saying they were forced to put COVID on all death certificates. We worked with this president to make sure there is funding at the National Institute of Health and there's funding at CMS and HHS and other agencies that are working feverishly to find a vaccine and other remedies. Minority Whip Steve Scalise of Louisiana said, and we're on the doorstep of a safe and effective vaccine for COVID-19 because of that work. Since May, the police killing of George Floyd protests have unleashed a nationwide call to grapple with police brutality and implement reforms in law enforcement. There have also been calls to tighten spending on police forces, with some calling to defund the police. Although the phrase means different things to different people, including shifting some responsibilities from the police to a social service, give me a break. House Republicans are proposing to increase police funding by $1.75 billion for the training, community policing, and equipment. This includes 500,000 more police body cams. Representative Pete Stauber, a former police officer, spoke on that issue. Stauber flipped the Democrat seat in Minnesota in 2018 election, a rare bright spot for the chamber's Republican 2018. The war on police must end. The terrorizing and elimination of law enforcement must stop, Stauber said. Law and order will be restored in our communities, and we will not abolish or defund our police. Another quote, he says, right now, folks, we need to give parents the choice to send their kids to the best schools, to the safest schools, and the right schools for their children. California Representative Republican Mike Garcia said, Garcia won an open seat in California previously held by a Democrat, Katie Hill, who resigned last year amid sexual scandal. Yes, they always have some kind of scandal going on. Okay, all right. So, both parties in the House have become fond of releasing these pre-election plans, apparently based on belief of a contact with America would be the key factor in outcome of the 1994 midterm election. Yes, they do want to speak to the people, but I don't see the Republican Party doing this as any other ploy in the fact that they want the American people to know that they stand with them. A lot of time when I'm looking at reviews, these liberal articles, we get this garbage. But I've never seen any evidence that voters have ever taken much notice of them in 1994 or any other time, and it's even harder to break through in the presidential election year. In 2016, former Speaker Paul D. Ryan unveiled his Better Way framework that focused on overhauling the tax code, a priority that became law in 2017. Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee Chairwoman Sherry Bustos was critical of Republicans' announcement. Leader McCarthy's theatrics can't paper over the fact that Washington Republicans have consistently put politics before public safety. That is a big freaking lie. That is a lie. An out and out lie. Who are the ones that just, oh, that's peaceful protest? Let them do peaceful protest. Even on our nation's capital, destroying our cities, talk about these are peaceful protests where people are burning things down and destroying people's businesses and property. The Democrats need to shut up and stop trying to split the script on the Republicans, because they are the ones who are doing what they're doing their dirt throughout this crisis. As they keep trying to accuse President Trump as though he's part of the problem. He's not part of the problem. He is the only solution. That is one of the reasons why he will be reelected to office in November. And we may have a fight because the Democrats have already started fraudulent things toward the election and counting of ballots. Well, you're watching the Black Conservative Voice with David Colbert. We'll be right back with you in a moment.
Commander-in-Chief. It's more than just a job. Since taking office, President Donald Trump has rebuilt our military, repaired a broken VA, and eliminated Soleimani, al-Baghdadi, ISIS, the world's deadliest terrorists brought to justice. Today, America is safer and stronger than ever, because to President Trump, it's more than just a job. It's a sworn duty to keep America safe.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Welcome back. You're watching the Black Conservative Voice with David Colbert here on the CTM News Network, the voice of truth. You know, I had a piece of interesting news here, and I'm going to read this particular petition here, and then I'm going to read you an op-ed from 2018 written by a gentleman back then by the name of, his name was Justin Haskins, I believe it was. But first we're going to read this petition. This is a petition to the American people. It was put up by a guy by the name of Gregory McCarthy. He started this petition a few years back to the American people, him and two other people. It's stated this way, and it's on the internet. If you want to sign this petition, go in there and sign it. It's a petition to remove Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. We, the American people, are fed up with the House Democrats not fulfilling their elected duties. Nancy Pelosi's hatred for our current president has rendered her unable to do her job as Speaker of the House. She should immediately step down as Speaker of the House and resign from her duties on Capitol Hill. She has wasted millions of taxpayer dollars trying to impeach the 45th President of the United States of America. She is incapable and unwilling to support her duties and to the American people. If she was a work-a-day person working like you and I in the private sector, she would have been fired a long time ago. And I do agree with you, Mr. McCarthy. She would have been fired a long time ago. As a matter of fact, she should have never been returned to the Speaker seat in the House of Representatives. That was a foolhardy and stupid choice by the House Democrats. They should have never put her in charge of the House at all. They did it because of the fact that they said she was powerful, but she's not powerful in a good way. I'm going to refer back to an op-ed that was done in 2018. Well, before I do, we're going to take a short break. But before I do that, I want to give you an opportunity. If you want to invest in this program, if you want to sponsor this program, our rates are very low. So if you want to go ahead and contact us from the email that is on the screen and let us know that you want to advertise during this program or during other programs on the CTM News Network, you are definitely welcome to do so. and it will save you a lot of money in getting through to a lot of people. I was just told today that this program now has gone from 10,000 viewers per episode from 15,000 to 22,000 viewers per episode. So this is a very viable avenue to advertise your products, services, or your campaign. We reach a lot of states, a lot of the major cities, and a lot of the major states in Dallas, Fort Worth, New York, California. We have a strong following there in California as well. Hi, California. How y'all doing out there? God bless you all. So we're going to go ahead and right now take a break here on the Black Conservative Voice. We'll be right back with you in a moment with a closing story.
Dr. Melinda Morris supports a strong economy, safe neighborhoods, limited property taxes, and promotes an improved education system. Dr. Melinda Morris wants to improve access and insurance coverage for medical care. Dr. Morris is pro-life and will support right-to-life legislation in Austin. Dr. Morris will remain true to her values when she is elected to office. She is going to Austin to promote life, prosperity, and personal freedom for the constituents of Senate District 13.
Welcome back. You're watching the Black Conservative Voice here on the CTM News Network, the voice of truth. And I'm your host, David Colbert. Nancy Pelosi is bad for America. Historically bad for America. This is an opinion piece on op-ed by Justin Haskin that came out shortly after the Democrats were put back in charge of the House in November 22, 2018. And I know all of you that voted for Nancy Pelosi are now regretting the fact that you did. And I'm hoping and praying that you don't this coming season so that she can just go home and retire. The woman's 80 years old. Have nothing against age, but I believe she's out of touch with the American people, and all she is seeing is dollar signs. Anyway, as Speaker Representative or Pelosi presided over some of the worst years in modern American history, while President George W. Bush often gets most of the blame, and unfairly so, for the 2008 economic crash. Few remember Democrats had been running Congress for nearly 2 years leading up to the recession, when Representative Pelosi was the party's most prominent and vocal leader. It was Representative Pelosi, along with other Democrat leaders like former Representative Barney Frank, a Democrat from Massachusetts, who routinely called for reducing home lending standards to achieve political goals, contributing to eventual collapse of the financial market. And according to former Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission member Peter Wallison, Representative Pelosi orchestrated what essentially amounts to a cover-up to hide the government's role in the crash. Even worse, Pelosi and her Democratic colleagues attempted to fix the disaster they were partially responsible for by wasting billions of taxpayer dollars on horrible stimulus packages. The Pelosi-backed American Recovery and Reinvestment Act cost more than $800 billion, and according to the analysts at the American Enterprise Institute, George Mason University, McCarter Center, Congressional Budget Office, and many more, it produced few meaningful results. Evidenced by the fact unemployment rose dramatically in the wake of this passage. Economist Peter Ferreira, his colleague at the Heartland Institute, analyzed every economic crash and recovery over the past century and found that Obama-Pelosi policies of 2009 and 2010 created the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. Pelosi's failures aren't limited to economics either. She was also one of the chief advocates of the Affordable Care Act, perhaps the single worst piece of health care legislation in American history. Not only did ACA force millions of Americans out of health insurance policies, they liked after being promised repeatedly that wouldn't happen. In other words, Obama got up and said, no, you can keep your policy. Yeah, whatever. After they doubled and tripled the policy. It also subjected tens of millions of families to skyrocketing health insurance premiums and deductibles. Premiums doubled from 2013 to 2017. And Health Pocket reports the average deductible for Obamacare Bronze Family Plan is a whopping $12,186, well beyond what most people can afford to spend in the midst of a health care crisis. Even after all of these failures, it appears Nancy Pelosi hasn't learned her lesson. She's still saying the best way to solve Americans' problems with health care is to repair Obamacare. Give me a freaking break. It's an impossibility for one thing, since fundamentally and hopelessly flawed, and she wants to impose costly renewable energy mandates and ridiculous attempts to control weather and battle climate change. You people, you can't change no freaking climate. God is in control of this weather on this earth. He holds the clouds, he holds the rain, he holds everything in his hand. You can't control it, and just like back in 1948, there was a heat wave back then. Did you say, was that a problem of climate change? Was there ozone problems? No, it wasn't an ozone problem. The world or whatever just heated up at that time. No climate change. People receiving, I don't know, it's just foolishness where Al Gore received a Peace Prize for his work in climate change. Give me a break. Pelosi has mocked and ridiculed the Tax Cuts and Job Acts and ignorantly referring to thousands of dollars in extra cash delivered by the tax reform package to millions of American families as crumbs. You know something? If y'all don't vote her butt out of office, I'm not going to be happy with you. Maybe I'll leave here, because if you're going to leave her in office and you're going to put President Trump out, then you need to get out of the country, because you are destroying our country. Nancy Pelosi and her team there in the House, that's all they wanted to do. They had an opportunity to get in the House and destroy it, and guess what? That's what they were trying to do. They accomplished hardly nothing in 2019. They were in 2018 either. All you have was a bunch of lawsuits, a bunch of who he said, she said. They did these things when they had the hearings with Kavanaugh and all the people that were trying to be the plan and all these things. All these different hearings and all this stuff. It's a waste of time. Leaving the American people out in the cold on health care and on taxes and everything else. And she called for raising taxes on job creators to fund her numerous proposals to expand the size and power of government, a strategy that would stunt economic growth and increase unemployment. We need to get her out of there. Pelosi policies have failed over and over again, which is why the House Democrats took one of the biggest political beatings in U.S. history during 2010 election, when Democrats in a single year went from enjoying a 79-seat advantage to being stuck with 49-seat deficit. Pelosi's policies offer Americans absolutely nothing they haven't already seen and rejected before: more regulations, higher taxes, less freedom, and fewer health care options. It's time for something better. And that is the truth. It's time for something better. People, we cannot afford another 4 years of Nancy Pelosi and AOC, Ilhan Omar. Vote their behinds out of office. You need to vote for Kimberly Klacik. Vote for all the Republicans that are set to take the place of these Democrats in the House, so that we can get this country on the move. The president is trying to move things forward, and they're in there trying to hold things up and hold things back. It is very frustrating. As an American citizen for all my life. It's very frustrating to me to see this type of foolishness going on in our government. But I do appreciate President Trump. He had to do a lot of what he had to do through executive order, but at least he got things done, and we are in a much better position than we were or would have been had that pandemic came with a Democratic president. We would have probably be wearing the little Chinese things if we would start looking like Chinese if the Democrats had got back in office, because they've been trying to put China in charge of us for years. We used to laugh when we was growing up. All the things were made in China. But now we have made in the USA. We're going to make it in the USA. I'm going to do something for my producers because they've been wanting me to do this, and I'm going to do it real quick, and then I'm going to close. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through all this mess with the Democrats. God bless you all. I want to say God bless you, God bless America, and God bless the world. This is David Colbert from the Black Conservative Voice saying good night.